share a video on how I transformed an old secretary cabinet into a delightful apothecary style secretary cabinet. Here it is. This is day one. This is me with my project. It was an old cabinet that was used for a baby changing station, of all things. It was painted with several layers of blue paint, latex paint, and it had 4 drawers, and the top drawer flipped open for a secretary. I spent quite a bit of time using a paint scraper, taking all of that paint over all of those drawers. After doing that, then I had to go with my sander and sand everything down and use 80 grit up to 220 grit on every section that you can see in this piece. I had to remove the back before I started so I could get in there and really get at all those angles. That blue paint was everywhere, including the inside of the drawers. I did end up having to use some stripper to get some of that old finish out of those cubby areas as well. And once I did that, then it was time to get down with my action plan. Now, what I had done was bought a Bauer multi-speed router because I wanted those drawers to look like apothecary drawers. So I wanted to cut those grooves in the drawers to make it look like there were 4 drawers in each drawer instead of just 4 drawers. So I got the router. I had to read the instruction manual, learn how to use it properly. I will say that it took a little bit of time to learn how to use it. How to put it together was probably the hardest part for me. The router cost me about $60 and the bits were another $30, but there were probably about 15 different router blades that were in there. After I learned how to adjust the depth, as I'm showing you here on this router, then I took my blade and inserted it in the router and tightened it in there and used a test wood piece to see how I wanted my apothecary lines to look. I tried a couple of straight 1/4 inch and 3/8 inch router blades and they were too wide. They just did not look right. So then I used a 3/8 inch width V blade and I used a 1/4 inch V blade, and I determined that the 1/4 inch V blade was probably the best look that I wanted. It didn't go in the drawer too deep, it wasn't too wide, and it was easy to maneuver. Now it's important when you're using this router that you want to be sure that you take all safety precautions. You also want to be sure that you use a straight edge and clamp it down because you are going to need that to move that router the way it's supposed to go. It moves like butter on a knife over bread. It's very easy to mess up if you're not careful. I did wear safety glasses, and my piece also was not a veneer, so it was a lot easier to cut. If I had a veneer top, then this might have been a little more tricky. Now there's the blade that I used, was the 1/4 inch V blade. Here I'm showing you the difference between the 3/8 and the 1/4 inch. And this is the actual depth and the blade that I'm going to use. I said that wrong. I want to say 3/8 inch is what I went with, not the 1/4 inch. And so here I am showing you how easy it is to make a cut with this Bauer multi-speed router. And it has 6 speeds, by the way, and I think I had it set on speed 5 because I wanted to get through this wood. It was a mahogany, and so it was a little tough to get through. Anyway, after I put my guide in place and I had my goggles on, I proceeded to line the router up with the guide as you're seeing here and position it to go right up against that guide all the way across. Now the reason I did it on the floor instead of the horse, I wanted to get a good grip on the router. I did try the horse, but the horse was too high and I didn't have as much strength or as much ability to maintain control of guiding this appropriately. So once you line it up and you get started, honestly it's really easy to get this going. It cuts very quickly and you'll be amazed what you can do with this router. I intend to use this for some other projects, and it will take some practice to get probably a better ability to use this with, let's say you wanted to do some curves or some diagonal cuts. Probably take a little more practice, but I think this is perfect for us. Now, once I finished everything with the router, I then primed my piece, and I also primed the back of the unit, and then I used Watco Danish oil in the finished walnut. For the drawers, for the top of the cabinet and the inside of the cubbies and the top of the piece. The back I primed because I did wallpaper it later, and I also wallpapered those drawers. Now, the paint that I used on the drawers is a Sherwin-Williams emerald paint, and then I stenciled these cute little black birds on the side of it. That wallpaper really set this piece off in a nice way. So once I got to this point, then I added the gold cup handles in each of the Apothecary squares that I made for those drawers, and I think that that really set it off really, really nicely. I loved the color of the wood with that nice brass look on the handles. Now, the inside of that top section, I painted that with gold Rust-Oleum paint because I wanted that to be bright and light in there. I didn't want it to be dark, and that section up there didn't have mahogany wood. Now, here's where I am showing it off and also looking for any imperfections that I need to fix while I'm working on it. I also added a cute little strip light inside the top. It really added some character, and that light was wonderful because it had different colors I could switch to. I could go to a yellow light, a white light, a blue light. It would even flash, but it really added some depth to this piece. And when you open the top, then you could see inside there if you were using it for anything, or if you wanted to leave that open, you can see the cubbies in there. Now, at this point, I hadn't attached the back to the unit. I hadn't nailed it in yet, so it wasn't quite on there tight. But I was looking to make sure, do I have the wallpaper on right? Does the lighting look appropriate? Is there anything else I need to do at this point before I call this piece finished? And here I'm turning the light off and examining again. Now, initially I had set this up in a special Halloween type theme. I think the challenge that I entered this in was light and dark academia, and here I put it in a room filled with all kinds of Halloween looking decor to really set it off and give it that dark, moody look. But I think that it really came together once I added those cup handles to those Apothecary style drawers. This piece was completely different from what it was before, and it's very classic. Black and wood are one of my two favorite combinations ever. When I finished this piece, it was done probably in about 9 days or so. I put quite a few hours in this. Most of it was the prep work and also stripping off all of that paint. When I was finished with it, it took me 2 days to sell, and it's all done, and this is my final picture. Thanks for watching.